Welcome to the Vibe Within podcast. I'm your host, Gab Cohen. Each week, we will connect through stories and conversations about wellness, yoga, addictions, spirituality, mental health, rituals, and everything in between. The goal is to transform our traumas into strengths to create the change we desire in our lives. My mission is to help others by shining awareness on real-life topics, so we can learn new ways to heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Whatever you are going through in this moment, you are not alone, so let's connect and heal our vibe within. Today is a mini-sode, and it's all about an idea that kind of struck me, a download, if you will, or just a epiphany, that the majority of the podcasts that I listen to, and maybe you can relate to this, the majority of the podcasts that I tune into and that I find myself going back to each day are hosted by men. And there's a very select few of podcasts that are hosted by women that I tune into, and I figured maybe that's happening for a reason. As you know, a lot of what I talk about on this podcast has to do with healing trauma, whether that is sexual trauma, whether that is trauma that's happened in relationships with friends, family, or lovers, or healing any type of energy that has to do with the masculine energetic form or males in general. A lot of what I talk about is about healing masculine and feminine energies and lots of shadow work. And I just found it really interesting that the majority of the podcasts that I'm obsessed with are hosted by dudes. And what I started to realize is that the men who are creating these amazing, powerful, open, and vulnerable podcasts are actually doing more than just a service to people who want to learn or people who are, wanting to hear about topics they're interested in. They're actually doing a huge service for the feminine spiritual community, because just by men being vulnerable and open and able to talk about their feelings and just release the blindfold and open the curtain, it actually is, in my opinion, the catalyst that can be the number one tool to heal this toxic masculinity. So this whole craze, this whole movement of masculine toxic vibrations, toxic masculinity, we've all heard these words. And I think that men in general, especially the men who are hosting these powerful and mind-expansive podcasts, are maybe doing the work, even if it's not their goal to heal the toxic masculinity kind of craze. They're doing a service regardless, and it's really just fucking awesome to open ourselves up and listen to grown men open their hearts, speak their feelings, speak about really detrimental experiences and transitions that they've gone through in their lives. In a way, it can transform the way that we think as women or female energy. It can transform the way that we think about masculine energy. It can help us rewire the ways that we judge masculine energy in this day and age. It can actually help us build our trust towards the masculine energy in the spiritual community. And I think that it's really cool what's going on in the podcast space right now. And I'm going to put all of the podcasts that I listen to that are hosted by males in the show notes. So go ahead and check that out. Again, this term that kind of came to me, masculine vulnerability porn, I spoke about it a little bit on my Instagram and my stories and my posts, and a lot of people agreed that, yeah, like, people love listening to these podcasts hosted by men, especially women. Women are loving it because it's allowing us to step into a realm that maybe we didn't really have before, because maybe the men in our lives aren't as open or haven't been open, and now we're able to hear and see men coming up and taking a stance and speaking their truths and being vulnerable and crying, and it's really awesome. So I feel like this podcast is kind of a thank you to all the dudes who are putting out just really powerful messages and being vulnerable for men and women to heal and to up-level our spiritual and mental and physical well-being. So without further ado, let's just get right into the episode. I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to share this episode with any podcasters or anybody who, might resonate with this. And also send it to any male podcasters so that they can hear this kind of perspective of the service that they're doing for everyone in the podcast community. All right, enjoy. A huge part of self-development and self-growth, or this process of becoming a better person, reprogramming and reparenting, is a really strong part of the process, as well as healing the inner child and all these things that we hear through these podcasts and amazing Instagram accounts like Lacey Phillips and the holistic psychologist. They are super about reparenting, which is basically rewiring the way that we were brought up and the way that we were conditioned. And just like your electronic device, just like your iPhone, just like your computer, it's programmed for a certain type of software. And the software is our emotions and our trauma and what molds us into who we are today. And it takes time to, put that program in. It takes time to download. It takes time to get in there, and then you have to make sure that you program it correctly and that it's installed correctly. Well, the same thing goes for how we were conditioned as humans. I mean, we are souls in a human body in this human experience, but we're also being programmed. And a lot of this shadow work that's been going on with Scorpio, Mercury retrograde, which is now over, and now we're into Sagittarius season. A lot of the shadow work that came up has to do with the myths, the stories that we tell ourselves, the loops that we find ourselves stuck in, and the same types of thought patterns that keep us stuck. So in order to reprogram and reparent and heal, we have to ask ourselves these questions. Who do you spend your time with? Who do you surround yourself with? I'm sure you all have heard this kind of theory. I know that I've heard it on Tim Ferriss' podcast, Aubrey Marcus, the list goes on. But who do you spend your time with? The 5 people that you surround yourself with are the main influences that are going to rub on you the most. Makes sense. I mean, energy is transferable. So whether it's music, podcast hosts, TV personalities, think about it. These are all forms of media, and maybe you're in a spiritual isolation type atmosphere right now. Maybe you're in spiritual solitude. Doesn't mean you're not hanging out with people's energy, right? Doesn't mean you're not hanging out with different types of music, and energy comes through music, podcast hosts, TV personalities, music composers. If you are putting that kind of media or whatever type of media it is into your energetic field, your aura, your around you, it's going to rub off on you. So how we nourish our bodies reflects on how we feel physically, right? Like what kind of food, organic, fruits, veggies, what kind of diet you're engaging in. And then how we nourish our minds and brains instantly reflects how we feel emotionally as well, and it can affect our perspective of our life and what's going on around us. So the type of music that you listen to, maybe you go through a phase where you're listening to like some heavy metal and it's like putting a damper on your mood. That shit's real. Maybe you're going through a phase, I do this all the time, like where I'll binge on a podcast. This week I was binging on Kyle Kingsbury's podcast and Aubrey Marcus's podcast. Just I go through phases, I'll take a break, I'll come back to it. And then I realize, oh wow, like this is awesome. Like I'm learning, I feel nourished, I feel like I'm being heard, I feel like I'm around a conversation that's really energizing and soul nourishing. And if you think about it, physical cleanses are not easy, but people go through them because they know that's what their body needs to cleanse and detox. I feel like we do need to cleanse and detox from different types of media that we digest and eat throughout the day, because it's an energetic type of detox, and sometimes that's going to be more challenging than your just green juice cleanse, if you know what I mean. So let's get a little bit deeper into this. How do we change the programming? How we can do it is by nourishing our body and our mind on the same level, and training and repairing the mind as if it's a machine, because it is a machine, and rewriting the stories. So if we start to rewrite the code, like how a computer is coded, a program is coding, we can recode the way that we think and recode the layers of toxicity that's been part of, it's been part of my life. The relationships, the toxic masculinity that a lot of us feel we've been part of. I feel like those types of narratives and paradigms are beginning to really dissipate. This podcast episode that I'm recording right now was inspired because I have been listening to several podcasts that are hosted by strong male personas, and subconsciously, I think what's going on with the toxic masculinity topic is that it's dwindling away, because these men who are hosting these powerful and open podcasts full of vulnerability, they're kind of rewiring the whole situation, and they're making women see that there are men out there who aren't narcissists, who aren't toxic, who aren't liars, who have a lot of love and compassion and a lot of amazing things to say and connect with. It's really beautiful to hear grown men who are in their late 30s, 40s, 50s speaking at a level of emotional vulnerability. And it can completely change our lives. What we eat and what media we consume, it's the same thing if you think about it. I mean, our mind also deserves nourishment. It's really simple shit, but sometimes we have to create boundaries for us to step away from the toxic things that we know are creating guilt, shame, fear, or, low self-esteem or low self-worth. Comparison is the thief of joy. So right now, unfollow whoever the fuck you need to make space for some more self-love. Anybody who makes you question your worth is just not worth it. I used to want a dude to fall in love with me for my looks or my body. And then I realized as I'm approaching 30 that my disordered eating, my addictions, my toxic relationships, all of that programmed and conditioned my mind to think that that was the only thing that attracts a man, or that's all I had to offer. And now I want nothing to do with that shit. Honestly, I want a dude to fall in love with the depth of my mind, my psyche, my life experiences, my scars, my stories, and definitely my traumas. So my analogy about masculine vulnerability porn, I just came up with it yesterday because it feels so real. What I've been doing unconsciously is listening to all of these super powerful podcasts hosted by smart, open, spiritual, emotional men, and it's giving me hope that I will bring in more men who hold these qualities. So it's helping me reprogram and rewire my trust and my self-worth by listening to strong and open and vulnerable men having these conversations that I would love to hear in my physical reality, not just in my my iPhone reality. But for now, this works. This is actually helping me strengthen my trust, my openness, my faith in men. And so I bow down and my hat's off to the men who are holding these amazing podcasts, who are speaking from love, who are crying on podcasts, who are shedding tears, who are finally breaking through this fucking paradigm that we've all been victim to. And now they are helping us by showing that there are men who can be emotionally intelligent and vulnerable and intelligent and strong and big and protected at the same time. So, just as a porn addict watches porn, I feel in a similar sense, I get off spiritually when I listen to vulnerable men speaking openly. So masculine vulnerability porn, it is a thing. And I think that it's an amazing thing because it is doing the work in such an effortless and organic way to help rewire the whole masculine toxicity and give everybody hope and kind of create this clean slate. And it gives us a chance to clear out the dead weeds, repot our plants, create a completely new garden, safe, spiritual, vulnerable, masculine. And this is just going to help me rebuild my own personal trust when I meet men out in the real world, in physical reality, and rebuilding the foundation of our relationships and our romantic energy is literally the medicine we need in order to see men in a different way. And not all men are full of this toxic masculinity. So that's what's going on in my life, and I'm going to share all of the podcasts that are hosted by these powerful men that I speak so highly of, and you can just check them out in the show notes. So masculine vulnerability porn, go get your fix. thank you guys so much for tuning in to that episode of The Vibe Within. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you resonated with it. I think that we all can kind of relate to how we're stepping out of that toxic masculinity realm, and thank God, because I was, as much as toxicity, it'll always be around, and it's not just in masculine form, it's in feminine form too. But I think it's really, really amazing what's going on in the podcast space, and it's just really amazing to be part of it. And I honestly feel like my brain is rewiring and recoding the more that I listen to male podcasts. And I'll keep adding to the list of male-hosted podcasts in the show notes, because I know I'll probably forget some, and then I'll have to go and add. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you for your time and your energy. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's several ways you can, listed in the show notes. The best way to support it is free, just by subscribing, rating, and reviewing. If you can give me a 5-star rating, that'd be awesome. Write me a review. That helps a lot too, because this is a one-woman show. So the more ratings and reviews that I get on iTunes, it will be easier for the podcast to reach many more people. So it's because of you that the podcast is thriving, and I really appreciate you guys so much. So if you'd like to share this episode with a friend, family member, or a coworker, or anyone, screenshot it and tag me on Instagram, GypsyLoveFlow, and that's all I got. Enjoy the rest of this song. Peace.